We're going to continue with our journey, the Gaia-X journey, in fact, for 2024, and also the roadmap for 2025. We have two speakers, Ulrich Ahle, who is CEO of Gaia-X, and Klaus Otradovic, who is, thank you, that got a thumbs up for the pronunciation, chair of the Gaia-X Technical Committee, and they're going to be presenting the roadmap. Welcome, gentlemen.
Lotta, and welcome again. I know that today we have several participants of our summit who are coming to our ecosystem for the first time. And on the other hand, we have very experienced people keen to know what happened during the last 12 months. And together with Klaus, I would like to give you an overview what happened, but also how we will continue to work together with you and how we change a bit our style of working. To start again, what's our vision? Our vision is to enable trusted, decentralized digital ecosystems. So it is about digitalization, it is about data, but it is also about trust. Trust as the foundation for all of this, as it was explained also by the minister in the session before the break. And why are we doing this? We had a press conference this morning, and where's Mark? Don't know. Mark asked, are you doing EDI? Yes, a lot of our members are still doing EDI, and that's how the industry started some 40 years ago, creating one-to-one interfaces, exchanging data between two different organizations using electronic data interchange. And then for the last 20 years, we've been working on digital platforms, on data platforms. I myself, my core competence is in product lifecycle management, so managing all data which are created during the product creation process. And all of you who did that know how much effort it cost to connect sources and users of data to such platforms. So simply this effort is limiting the scaling of it. That's why we are only able to connect few to few, even if the few are thousands or 10,000s. And now we are paving the way for data spaces with the ambition to connect many to many, to connect millions to millions. And this is only possible when we are able to connect them automatically without any additional effort. And in Europe, we are doing this based on the legislation which has been explained before, the Data Governance Act, the Data Act. And to be able to do so, we need standardization. And we need trust. Trust in the participants, trust that they are able to identify themselves, that we are able to authorize them, to allow them to bring data into the data space or to use them. And finally, and this was also mentioned this morning, with this we are creating the basis for artificial intelligence. AI need, especially generative AI, need trustful data. And here there is clearly a coexistence of data spaces and AI. But especially the blue boxes you see here, they are only relevant for Europe. And they are described in the first version of our compliance document, which is relevant for Europe. But a lot of our members need global data-driven business processes. And therefore, we have started to work together with non-European regions, starting here, especially with Japan and Korea, to develop ways that data spaces in their regions can work together with data spaces which are created based on European values, find interoperability. And this is bringing me to the mission. So how are we doing this? We are fulfilling our vision by creating de facto standards which are enabling federated and trusted data and infrastructure ecosystems. And this is what we are doing in our community. And this interoperability I mentioned before is described in 4 layers: technical, semantic, organizational, and legal. And the work of the first years of Gaia-X has resulted in documents: the Gaia-X compliance document addressing the first 2 layers, and the technical documents, the technical compatibility references, several documents, the Gaia-X architecture document, for example, addressing the semantic and the technical interoperability. And both paperwares, documents, policies, and rules are implemented within the Gaia-X digital clearinghouse, which is fully open source, implementing this interoperability and also implementing the trust framework, providing the trust in this, and it is ready for worldwide adoption. Started in Europe, but again, we are open. We are inviting regions outside of Europe to follow this approach and to develop policies and rules according to their needs, according to their legislation and legal ecosystem. And with all of this, we are focusing on end-user services. We are not creating data spaces just for the sake of data or the data spaces itself. We are creating data spaces together with our members to provide services, to create added value for the end users, to allow farmers to increase their yield rate using satellite data, for example, and optimizing their machines to bring out fertilizers there where the crop needs it, or to enable automotive manufacturers to calculate just with one click the whole carbon footprint of their car, starting with the producer of the raw material, the different supplier tiers up to the end product. And coming back to the compliance document, there are different requirements for security, for sovereignty. And we've published this Gaia-X compliance document 2 months ago, describing 4 different levels of sovereignty and compliance to the regulations. And the highest one can only be fulfilled by providers, in this case, headquartered in Europe. And again, this first version of the compliance document is one based on the European legislation, and others to follow. Still, this was quite a hard work to define it, and it created quite a lot of media echo. And I've copied here one from LinkedIn, where this Gaia-X level 3 is compared with a regulation in France called SREN, and the famous European cybersecurity scheme, EUCS, where there is a discussion whether to put in what is called High Plus. And this is similar to the Gaia-X label level 3, or not to put it in. And for the moment, for our members, for the market, the Gaia-X label level 3 is an alternative to request in their RFPs, in their implementations, sovereign solutions based, in this case, on European values. And I talked about the Gaia-X digital clearinghouses. So far, we have 8 in operation. There are more who have signed the agreement and who are setting up the clearinghouses and in the pipeline. And we are very proud that Entity Data, together with partners like Fujitsu, like SoftBank, like Entity Communications, have implemented the first Gaia-X digital clearinghouse outside of Europe. It was announced beginning of October, so a month ago, when Roland, our CEO, and me have been in Japan. And it is the first step to create global ecosystems, started in Europe and now continuing in Japan, and we are on a similar way, I think, in Korea and in other regions of this world. And these clearinghouses are the enablers for interoperability, which is needed in the different data spaces. And in total, there are roughly 150 data space development projects ongoing. If you look at the data spaces radar, and out of them, 16 have been endorsed to be the Gaia-X Lighthouse project, and 2 became Gaia-X data spaces, which are up and running. ACK Data Hub and Catena-X. Both were mentioned already this morning. And what we see, especially with the first data spaces coming into operation, that we need a new role in this environment, a new entrepreneurial role, taking over the responsibility, the business responsibility for the operation of these data spaces. And in parallel, we have an economic theater running this morning, where the University of Paris Dauphine is discussing this with several of the existing up and running data spaces to create some models and to help new data spaces to develop into this direction. 150 data spaces in preparation, projects supported by public funding, and we started to collect the different fundings which are provided by the European Commission. You see it in the lower part, but also on member state level. And this list is for sure not yet complete, but shows already an investment, a public investment into the creation of data spaces of nearly 2.5 billion euro. And there's more to come. And this is only the public funding. It is not including the private investment, which is done to create interoperable data spaces. And a final comment from my side. We are not able to do this alone. The task is quite big. So we joined forces already 3 years ago with 3 other partners, with the Big Data Value Association, with FIVER, and with the International Data Spaces Association, IDSA. And this collaboration is called the Data Spaces Business Alliance, targeting to create a common architecture, with this being able to speak with one voice to the market. And all of these organizations have a hub network, like we have Gaia-X hubs, like here in Finland. And in total, we are combining more than 100 hubs, allowing us to gather requirements from the market, but also use the hub for spreading the results and the solutions to the market. And all of them are member-driven organizations combining more than 1,000 members from all over the world. And we have started to further detail the collaboration in a partnership of IDSA and Gaia-X, where the focus of Gaia-X is to provide the trust basis, to provide the trust framework and the technology to implement the trust framework with the Gaia-X digital clearinghouses, and where IDSA is providing the data spaces protocol and enhancing this. So we have different building blocks which can be put together to create interoperable data spaces. And to enable this, really this technical collaboration, this is part of the technical committees in the different organizations. And the one within Gaia-X is headed by Klaus. And with this, Klaus, I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you, Ulrich. He's going to come back. It's actually a perfect slide to introduce my topic a little bit, because you've seen before 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people sitting on the couch and working about how do we build an integrated kind of architecture. And I'd just like to think you about, it took, sorry Ulrich, it took 5 years in a friendly environment to come to such an agreement. And also when we started, this slide is mentioning the soon to be released global version of data space concepts in the ISO 22021. When Gaia-X started, there was not a common description of data space concepts. We have started with, let's build data and infrastructure ecosystems. And when Ulrich asked me, what about the roadmap? I said, we need to think the roadmap not just inside the SBA, inside Gaia. We need to think about it with all the ecosystem participants across the board, and we perhaps don't have a horizon of just 2025. We need to look at how are these things are going to evolve in the next years. And to illustrate that a little bit, I give you a little bit of an history where we've been starting. We have been starting 2020, roughly about 2020, we have been starting with the idea from the get-go to build all these individual domain-specific and infrastructure ecosystems. There have been initiatives that have been developing open source to make all these federation services happening. And in fact, the idea of a trust framework of the clearinghouses has only started to materialize in 2023, 2025. So what we have seen is 5 loosely connected, loosely coupled roadmap where each of the projects, the 150 that Ulrich has mentioned, the 16 Lighthouse projects, and the 2 data spaces that Ulrich has mentioned have been working on very, very tight timelines to reach their specific objectives. And as I said, we have been loosely coupling things, whilst at the same point in time, concepts that have been presented in the European Data Strategy on the 19th February 2020 have only over the 5 years come to fruition with Data Act, Data Services Act, and the other acts. And where we are now in 2025, we have a number of data spaces, ecosystems that many of them have chosen different type of technologies, technology choices that actually do connect to the clearinghouses, that do connect to Gaia-X, but that are a little bit challenged by making sure that the interoperability, the federalization, the globalization with all the standards that are changing over time, with all the individual domain-specific concepts, with the brownfields that they have to support are working. And so when Ulrich asked me about the roadmap, I said, we need to, now that we have been through this phase of growing, through this phase of incubation, we need to shift to a way where we really start getting into the scaling of the systems going forward. We need to think more about taking in what is already happening in regulation, like for instance, IDAS 2 is going to generate a new type of digital identities. They're going to create wallets. We have lots of solutions on shared services, on domain-specific credentials that have been developed in the data spaces. We need to be able to take that in. And the push from the technical committee and the roadmap is that we will be working towards an integrated roadmap. I will change the way the technical committee is working more from a mode where we are working, deciding together with all the relevant stakeholders, and that includes the ones that need to connect mobility and travel and manufacturing and energy and whatever kind of stuff that need to address how we can work in a decentralized, in a global way. And that will also, from a technical committee perspective, from the architecture we're building, support the setup and the creation of sustainable economical models. So it's a little bit of change. Let's move away from these separated, loosely connected roadmaps to an integrating planning, what we want to do in the next 5 years, so towards an aligned planning. From a delivery perspective, it will change in one way, is that we will work on what I would call a systems architecture. Not just how does a trust framework look like, how can a trust framework feed all the other data spaces, but also what is a general ontology of data spaces in not only in a technology, in an operational way, in a way and how you can commercialize it, leveraging everything that's going on in regulation. We talked about the ISO as a general definition of data space concepts. We talk about Sensenelec for trusted data transactions. There's IEEE 3800, there's the e-wallet, and actually also the work that has been happening in all the other initiatives. So this is not what Gaia-X as the association is originally doing, but it's the environment that we're connecting to, and we will find a way to describe such a systems architecture that's doing the realization of all these data spaces and infrastructure ecosystems, whilst in the middle, with the original deliveries we are driving, we actually will become a little bit more precise and strict to be very, very clear on how, in a versioned way, we are connecting to the standards that are evolving, the choices of technologies that have been made by the various data spaces, and something we have also not formally in the technical committee addressed is the life cycle, the developments in the various open source initiatives that have found solution for monetarization, that have found solution for some of these use cases, that we bring that into an integrated planning. So it becomes easy to use it from any kind of new data spaces, that it becomes easy for the small end businesses to connect to something that will follow one systems architecture with multiple choices based on the domains, based on the different regulatory environments in Europe or globally, and that will allow us the scale, the maturity, and also the commercial sustainable development of data spaces going forward. So from a little bit, that's my last slide, an inside-out view where we've been thinking very, very hard on making clearinghouses work, on making trust frameworks work, to an outside-in view where we make sure that everything that has been done in the 150 projects, in the 18 lighthouse projects that will be done in regulatory software development efforts, that will be done in investments by the European Commission, like on Simple, like all of that is going to come together, not as a single solution, because that's never going to exist, but a landscape of architectures, regulation, open source solution, where the Gaia-X trust framework will provide the enablement of digitally decentralized trust in an easy way, because we have thought about the whole landscape of OSS and the respective application or system architectures going forward. And personally, and that's the last word I'm saying, we need to have everybody who is an architect in a data space need to understand the benefit that they hopefully get out of this approach. And we also invite, and please ask me personally on how we're going to plan that, invite to really join the technical committee, because with the wider scope, it becomes more and more important that we do this joint, aligned roadmap planning on a systems architecture going forward. And with that, we go back to the 2025 roadmap.
Yeah, thank you, Klaus. And this is really an invitation to all of you to create the future of interoperable data spaces based on a federated infrastructure. Yeah, we are not only talking about the upper level of the X, we are talking also about the center and the underlying infrastructure, because data does not flow in rainbows. So we need both, and therefore we are inviting you to shape this future together with us and to bring it all into this roadmap. And I don't want to go through it because we are now exactly 3 minutes and 50 seconds above our time. Just one comment, these are an overview for the next year on events, on marketing, on market adoption, which becomes more and more important, and also the technical part. And one announcement here, we are planning to combine MarketX and TickX event next year. We got the feedback, please do not do so many events. We love to come together, but we need to be focused, so we will combine both. And we are looking for the right solution to also combine our OGA, our Ordinary General Assembly meeting of the members of Gaia-X with this event. Whether it will still be purely digital or in a hybrid version, we will further develop in the next weeks and let you know. So this was a bit view back to what happened during the last 12 months, how have we developed, and what about the future in the next 12 months until we see each other at a summit next year, and more on this one than tomorrow. Thank you very much.